quick video, and it will be quick, about my sourdough starter. So I've had a disaster with the bread, and it's flat and it's not risen very well, and when it was proving, there was cracks appearing on the top of it. I made a loaf a couple of weeks ago, and the same thing happened to that, and I thought it was because it was like we were having a really hot summer, and I thought it was that I'd over fermented it. And what I actually think now is that my starter's a little bit too old, and it's fermented that much in the jar that it's actually started to turn into alcohol, and the alcohol content of my starter has got a little bit too high, and that alcohol is affecting the bread and the way it proves, and kind of breaking, and the alcohol is acting in a way that it breaks down the gluten. I was a little bit worried that I've lost my starter, and as I smell the starter now, so this is my starter, it's about 18 months old now, I can smell that there's alcohol there, and it smells a little bit like, it smells like my yeast culture. So this is my yeast culture that I use for fermenting, and it smells a little bit like this. So you kind of go, ah, that's alcohol. So I kind of know what alcohol smells like now when it's fermenting and that kind of stuff. And that's what's happened with that. So I was worried that I might have to start making another starter. It's not a problem. It just takes a little bit of a while to get going, and you don't get the flavour of the starter to start off with. Oh, that's what the bread looks like in the centre. It's all right. It's just not. It's just a bit dense. I'll do something with it. I've made 3 loaves. I was going to give them away, but I ain't giving them away because I'm disappointed with the quality of that loaf from what they normally are. I'll just slice it and we'll dry it, and I'll turn it into crisp breads. So I was a little bit worried that my starter was going to become useless. So what I decided I'd do is I thought, well, maybe we can take a little bit of that starter, and hopefully there'll be some yeast still in there. And if we take a little bit of that starter and add it some more flour and water, that it will start, the yeast will have a better chance to grow because there's an alcohol there to stop it from growing. So we might just be able to revive it a little bit by taking a little bit of that starter and add it to a lot of flour and water. And it looks like it's worked because it started to ferment really well. So I started that yesterday, and it's at that stage already. So it's all nice and bubbly. So it looks like I've managed to save my starter, and because I've saved my starter, I've kept the really good yeast, because there's a few types of yeast when you start off a starter. This is not going to be a short video, is it? No. There's a few types of yeast, and then the predominant yeast kind of takes over the other yeast, and you're just left with one type of yeast. So, and it's got all that flavour. So I have saved my starter by just, so if it ever happens to you that your starter starts to smell a little bit alcohol-y, there's too much alcohol in it. So you take a little bit of it, add it to some fresh flour and water, and hopefully it will save the starter. And then I know in future now what I really should be doing is I should be using more of my starter to make my bread. So I'll take maybe 4/5 of that, save 1/5 of it, and add that little bit of the 1/5 back to some more flour and water, and kind of cultivate it that way, so we won't get more of a build-up of alcohol, if that kind of makes sense. So it just smells really bready, not particularly alcoholic. Well, it smells yeasty bready, so that's a good thing. So that now I'll feed it again, I'll put a little bit more flour and water in it, and I'll put it back in the fridge to slowly kind of ferment. And then on a regular basis what I'll do is I'll take my starter right back to maybe a couple of teaspoons full, and in a fresh batch of flour and water, and then it will keep it nice and fresh and not get to the stage where it's turning into alcohol. So that's going to get thrown away. I can't even use that to make a batch of bread because there'll be too much alcohol in that, and it will start to break down the gluten structures. I think I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that's what's happened. Anyway, so how to save your sourdough starter if it starts to turn into a little bit alcoholic.